Please welcome to the stage the president and CEO of Lowe's, Marvin Ellison, for an interview with the president and CEO of the Network of Executive Women, Sarah Alter.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
All right.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. So Marvin, I was getting ready last night for our talk, and I was doing a little bit of research, and I was on the Shoptalk site, and I stumbled across this quote, and it's from Forbes. And this quote says that if you can only choose one trade show to attend each year, make it Shoptalk. Hands down, best retail trade show going.
All right.
So we are clearly gracing the right stage, correct?
All
right, but then it gets better. It says the speaker lineups are killer. So no pressure, but we got to rock this stage, okay? Because we got to be killer.
We'll do our best.
So with that, trust me, because when Shoptalk had asked me a couple of months back, they said, hey, we'd love to have you come interview the CEO of your choice. And it was a no-brainer. Marvin and I had met about a year back at another event, and I left just so genuinely impressed by him. You know, he's a leader who over the past 30 years has transformed a number of key brands. But I was as equally impressed by his success as I was by just the humility and the genuine nature that he has. And I think that is so key to his success. And I hope we get to share that today. But even more importantly, we want to talk about his great new adventure. He's now been at Lowe's as the CEO for the last 7 months.
Yes.
And he's got some great stuff to share. So let's start there. You've been in this role now for 7 months, and you've gone in and you've built and rebuilt and turned around a number of other brands very successfully. But when you go in as a CEO, what's that framework you use to assess, okay, here's what I've got, here's what I don't got, and here's what do I need to do shorter term and long term?
Well, thank you. I think the first thing, growing up in a little small rural town in Western Tennessee, in a big family, my mother taught me and my siblings that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen more than you talk. And so coming into a new organization, one of the first things I've learned, and this is from mistakes made in the past, is just come in and listen. And so my first day was July 2nd, and there were banners up at the corporate office and digital signs welcoming me to the company. The problem is on July 2nd, I didn't show up. I went to work in a store at the contractor's desk because I wanted to understand why we were not serving that customer segment better. And then the next day I didn't show up. I went to another store and I worked in receiving to understand the freight flow process and how we were executing the delivery of e-commerce. And then the next day I was on the sales floor learning the in-stock process, et cetera. And all the while I was having lunch with hourly employees, I was having breakfast with contractors, I was talking to customers, and that's my natural routine. It wasn't for a photo op because I didn't want cameras there, because I was trying to learn. And so that's a microcosm of listening, trying to understand the culture, because the mistakes I made in the past is if I'm coming to a new company, then I'm coming in to solve problems, and so obviously I have all the answers, but really you don't. You have to understand the culture, you have to listen to the true concerns of the employees, but you also have to understand what the root cause is of some of the things that are not working, because oftentimes we work on the symptoms but not the actual root cause of the issue. And so that is my process. And going forward, how do I maintain that? Every week I'm conducting town halls, I'm in stores, and I do a lot of things to try to stay connected.
Excellent. No, I love that. You were engaging with not only your employees, so that inward focus, but then that external focus. You were right there where your customers were.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So talk to us about your customers. Who is it that Lowe's is targeting? Like, who do you want to lure into your stores and onto your site? And then how are you going about selling to them, serving to them, and most importantly, retaining and growing them?
Well, home improvement is a little different because typically you can ask a question, who's your core customer? And most retail businesses can be very specific. Home improvement, you really have three customer segments you're trying to solve in the same store environment, in the same digital platform. You have what we call do-it-yourself customers. Those are the customers that want to come in and buy the paint to paint the room themselves. They want to come in and go through a workshop to learn how to put wall tile in their powder room. They want to touch it, fill it, and do it themselves. That's one segment. The other segment is what we call do it for me. Customers that are time starved and they don't have the time to do a project, so their idea of a project is writing a check because they can get it done faster, or the project is too complicated. Or the project is too complicated. Maybe you want to redo your kitchen or your bathroom, so they want someone that can come in and manage a project for them. And then the third segment is the pro, the customer that leverages Lowe's for their supply house, buy all their building materials and all of the things that they need on a daily basis to do their small business. And so you got these three uniquely different customer segments all operating in one brick and mortar location or one digital site. So how do you serve all three and you serve them well? The good news is that in a typical store that's roughly 110,000 square feet, you can serve all three of those customers without disenfranchising the other. The do-it-yourself customer rarely makes it all the way down to the pro side with lumber, concrete, and building material. The pro typically is not going to make its way down on the do-it-yourself side. And in the project Do It For Me, you can kind of serve both customers. And so for Lowe's, the opportunity is how do you continue to serve the do-it-yourself customer, which is the core customer, but grow your business on the professional contractor. And why is that important? Because the pro spends 5 times more annually than the typical do-it-yourself customer. So there's more footsteps, it's higher transaction, and there's higher ticket value. And so serving both of those customers while making sure you can resolve and leverage the project business that's the ultimate objective.
So do you have different sales or service teams then dedicated to each one of those three, or everybody's trained to serve everyone?
It's a great question. We have different teams serving different parts of the store. And here's this is a nuance. It may not sound like a nuance, but it is. Serving a pro customer from a customer service standpoint is uniquely different from serving a do-it-yourself customer. Do-it-yourself customer wants to come in and they want to decide what's the best paint to put in my daughter's room because she's 3 years old and I need something that I can easily wipe off any crayon marks or anything like that. And so you want to help that customer get the exact right product. The professional customer doesn't need your help in determining what do I buy. They want your help in how can you fulfill it, ship it, and to make sure they get the right pricing and quantities. So it's a different service model. And so if you try to serve both customers the same, then you're going to not deliver the level of service that they expect. And so you have to understand the customers, the age-old adage, understand your customers' desires and make sure you serve those customers to your highest potential.
So let's talk a little bit about competition. You compete with large chain retailers, we won't name names, local hardware stores, and then online retailers like Amazon, right? And one might argue that maybe the more local and the online retailers could be more nimble than you could be. How are you competing? Like, how are you guiding Lowe's through this journey? Well, so Lowe's is a $71 billion company. We have 1,700 plus stores in the U.S. And a total of 2,400 stores, within the U.S. and Canada. So from a brick and mortar standpoint, it's a really big company. But within that kind of universe of expectation, you have a $900 billion addressable marketplace. And so if we're a $71 billion company, that tells me you have over $800 plus billion of market share opportunity that's up for grabs. That tells you how fragmented the marketplace is for home improvement. Having said all of that, the way any retailer is going to win today, digital or brick and mortar, is you have to serve customers the way they desire to be served. Simple. It is just that simple. And if you think about Lowe's being a traditional brick and mortar company, we still do, give or take, $4 billion a year online, or we call e-commerce. And of that, 70% of all those e-commerce transactions are either picked up in a store or fulfilled from a store. So think about that for a second. We are an omni-channel company doing roughly $4 billion in online sales, and 70% of those sales are either picked up or fulfilled
from a store. And so that tells you the power of being able to serve customers the way a customer desires, because maybe the customer wants to buy it online and then pick it up within an hour because it is an immediate need. Or maybe they want to buy it in a store and then we fulfill it and ship it to them from a store. Or maybe they want to buy it online, ship it to a store, and then pick it up because it's big and bulky. And so the objective is, how do we understand the needs of the customer, and how do we leverage our brick and mortar locations, our distribution center network, and our e-commerce digital platform to serve that customer as seamlessly as we possibly can the way they want to be served. For retailers that can't deliver on that, it's going to be a really tough experience today and in the future to really find sustainable growth.
So when someone comes into the store then to pick up their order, how much of an opportunity is there for you to increase that order? Or are they just coming and getting that item and leaving? Like there's an upsell opportunity, right? Or you can increase the ticket or... So
almost 30% of the time a customer comes in to pick up an order, they buy something else.
Which is a beautiful thing.
It's all about the most important thing that you can have as a retailer is footsteps. Digital footsteps or physical footsteps. So whatever it takes to bring the customer in, and to your point, they're coming in because they bought something online, it's paid for, they're coming in to pick it up. And maybe they remember there's something else I need to buy, or maybe they will visually see something that catches their attention. And all of those things really matter. And that's really the power of having a balance between digital and brick and mortar. But the key is, how do you seamlessly connect those things so you take the friction away from the customer and you can serve them in a way that drives little effort by them and fulfills their expectations. And that is something that Lowe's is building. We're not nearly as good at that as we need to be.
Yeah.
But even in our current state, 70% of those digital transactions are fulfilled or picked up in a store. So it tells you there's enormous opportunity to get a lot better.
So clearly your success has been driven by you're a strategist, you're an operator. You've proven that successfully multiple times. But as I referenced earlier, the other aspect of you as a leader that's so strong is your commitment, your unwavering commitment to culture. Share with us what you think some of the toughest barriers are when, as a leader, you go into an organization and you've got to shift, you've got to rebuild or build out that culture.
Well, I think the most important thing is you want to create an environment where the team believes they can win. And as simple as that sounds, there are so many organizations where you will give out a financial plan and the first thing that the team will think is, well, I can't achieve this. And so immediately they don't believe they can win. The other thing you have to do is you have to have clarity of purpose. Mm-hmm. And so as simple as that sounds, I'll ask everyone in this room to do a really simple test that I've done over and over again. And that is, at your next staff meeting, ask your team to take out a sheet of paper, tell them to write down the mission statement of the company, tell them to outline the 3 key initiatives that will deliver on achieving the mission, and ask them the 3 top financial measures that matter most for the organization.
Yeah.
And you will find out quickly that you're not nearly as aligned as you think you are. And so totally. Without a common purpose and clarity of mission, without a crystal clear expectation of what you are delivering or you're driving to deliver the mission, and without a good understanding of what is being measured, you have a lot of people working very hard, and I call this equivalent of running on a treadmill. You're exerting a lot of effort, but you're not going anywhere. And so what I tend to find out is that the way you can reset the culture is you first need to have clarity of mission. You need to make sure there's a clear understanding of how to achieve the mission and what is being measured. And then you need to reward great work. And you also need to, conversely make sure there's a high degree of accountability, because there's nothing worse for a hardworking employee than to see someone sitting next to them, not working hard, but getting equal consideration in everything. So it's really a good balance. And I think the other thing is creating an emotional connection between the leader of the organization and the working individuals. I call them the frontline leaders of the company. Whether you're in the service business or you're in the retail business, who's on the front line, who's in the call center, who's in the stores, who's in the fulfillment centers, who's really closest to touching the customer? Is there a communication link between the leader of the organization and those individuals? And one of the first things I did was publish my email address to the company. And I answer every employee email that comes in personally. I get a lot of them, trust me. They figured it out quickly. I didn't have to tell them, they figured it out before I told them. But the other thing I do is, every Friday I do a video podcast to the whole organization, even to our employees in India and around the world. And I just take about 5 minutes and I just kind of talk about my week, talk about what's in the news, I talk about what's happening around the company, and I reinforce some key messages that we want to reinforce as a company, but I want them to hear it directly from me.
Yeah.
And so those are just ongoing things that I try to do to create the right culture and to make sure that we have a culture with a winning spirit.
And you can't underestimate your point about the clarity of mission too. I run a not-for-profit, and I have a couple of my team members out here, and every town hall we do a quiz. What are our 5 core strategic pillars? And I'll tell you, for the first 6 months, not everybody could list them.
Yeah.
So to your very point,
Yeah.
and you can list them, that's one thing, but do you line up behind them,
Absolutely.
which is the other,
Yeah.
which is your point about emotional connections. Let me shift a little here. You've been the only one
Yeah.
in a room. I have 2. Talk to the other leaders out in the audience here who've been that only one. Like, what guidance would you give them on how to navigate that situation?
Well, I'll tell a quick story. When I was a young executive, I was promoted to go to the corporate office of a company I was working for, and I grew up in the South. And so this was kind of in the Midwest, and it was in the 90s, and it wasn't really diverse. So I looked around, there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me. So I was not only the only one, I was really the only one. I mean, there was no one looked like me. And so the first thing that I was struck by is I was really different, but it was not only a difference in my ethnicity, but just style and just how I dressed and the things that I did in my spare time. And so my first thought was, well, I need to convert, because I need to fit in. Because
We've all been there.
obviously, the way that I'm going to be successful is I need to fit in. I need to blend in. And so I went out and bought me a couple pair of khaki pants and a couple different variations of penny loafers.
With pleats, right? Yeah.
A couple of blue shirts. And I'm blending in, and it's not going too well. And I remember, coming home about 6 months into this failed experiment, and my wife asked me, well, how's it going at work? I said, well, it's a lot harder than I thought. I said, technically, I know the job. I said, but I just don't feel like I fit in. And then she said something to me that was a reminder of something my dad had said countless times in this little small town. She said, why don't you just relax and be yourself?
Yeah.
And the lesson is, my dad taught us, because we didn't have a lot. We were economically challenged. In other words, we were kind of poor when I was growing up. And so my dad would say to us, you may not have the most money in the bank, you may not have the nicest clothes, you may not have the nicest house or the most modern car, but nobody can beat you being you.
Right.
Nobody can beat you being you. And so I came to the conclusion, look, I'm different. And I'm going to leverage that. In other words, I'm going to be my most authentic self. And so I decided to, dress professional, but, I like a little color.
Yeah.
So it was my style. So I wanted to be me. I wanted to sit in a meeting and in a very articulate way talk about the things that mattered most to me. I grew up in the stores, and so I had a perspective on the stores. And I started to speak to that more confidently. And what happened is people were more interested in what I had to say. Because I believe blending in was the answer, but the real answer was standing out.
Yeah.
And the moment I realized that when I decided to be my most authentic self in how I dressed, what I talked about, what mattered to me, people were more interested in what I had to say because I was less of a commodity. When I blended in, I was just like everybody else, and so I commoditized myself. But the moment I stood out, my unique opinion was interesting because it was a scarcity. And that was a great lesson for me. And I'll say that lesson to every female executive, every executive that feels like you're the only one. That is a powerful place to be. Just be the best you, be your most authentic self, and embrace it. And whatever you do, don't blend in, because all you do is commoditize yourself. And no one wants a commodity because it's low price and easily accessible.
right, so I don't know about you guys, but I think he rocked the stage. He was killer. Yep. And like I said, I was so excited when Marvin agreed to come chat with us. Little known fact, he started his career as a security guard, and now he's a Fortune 40 CEO. So thank you, Marvin.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.